Have you ever felt tired of the music you listen to? Have you ever wanted to discover new great songs but were too scared or lazy to actually give something new a chance to impress you? Have you ever felt like you don't belong to this world? Have you ever felt like you are constantly in a limbo and nothing around you feels real, really? If you can connect with at least one of the statements above, this video has a chance to help you. As you've already read the thumbnail before clicking here, you know that it is gonna be about a musical album. There's a comment I wanted to post under that musical album. It ended up being too long beyond any platform's character limitation. So I'm recording it in this format now. Some trivia before the main stuff. The album is called The Angel, The Demon, composed by Kakala or Kakola or Kakula. I'm sorry, I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced. I haven't found info nowhere, but low-key, I think it's Coca-Cola through the association with Coca-Cola. I don't know. So it was composed by Coca-Cola, a solo artist, 2015 through 2019, based on Undertale's lore, but seldom featuring any lyrics. Though it seems Coca-Cola wanted to make a fully verbal narrative with a musical accompaniment first. On Genius.com you can find their own explanations for what lore part each song represents. So I wrote a story myself based on these, and if you want to first listen to the album, sure, go ahead. But I think reading the story first doesn't spoil the experience, but instead prepares one for it, and thus actually increases its impact on one. So here the comment is. Flash alert: if you are epileptic or you are sensitive to light flashes, please don't watch the video content of the next part. Leave the audio in your background and listen to it. Open a new tab, but don't watch the video. It's quite flashy. Thanks. Dear Coca-Cola, I think it's criminal if I don't let you know what this album made to me. It got me crying multiple times. This is absolutely abnormal for me. This is a huge progress. I do know the people characterizing this album as life-changing. I've read your explanations to each of the songs, having familiarized myself with the story of Chara and a little bit of Undertale's lore. I've never played before yesterday, but they also align with the story of my life. Let me familiarize you with it. I'm not sure whether I should describe it in the first or in the third person. Does first person storytelling sound too selfish or narcissistic and thus harder to connect with? Let's do it the other way and change me to Chara, keeping the magic of the original story with it. The demon begins the story representing the first 10 years of Chara's life, starting with their birth, childhood nonchalance, and openness to any connection and conversation with anyone. Red Eyes marks their transition to middle school, where, due to mixing of children from different classes, Chara started noticing the environment becoming more hostile to them, with them now being rather an outsider in the group, even being bullied sometimes, even though they were constantly trying to hang out with the cool children, or at least someone, but they haven't been finding connection with no one. Snowman marks the moment when the hope to be a normal member of society was lost, but suddenly, on the 1st of September of Class 7, everyone started treating Chara like an absolutely normal person. Chara was still uncomfortable with talking to people, but was definitely happy this happened. Just a month later, they met another person, let them be genderless, Asriel, online from the same school, who they haven't heard of before. They were really open to that, and were seeing something valuable in Chara. When they both met up, Asriel was the first person ever to hug Chara, besides their parents. Chara was touched to the bottom of their soul by it, and thence Asriel became their first love. Forever? Family-friendly montage, or I don't know which way to turn, conveys the happy existence of Chara when they finally made some friends to generally have fun with, alongside with Asriel. Many happy, comfy little stories had happened in that period, and Chara was passionately trying to acquaint every single friend that they had to each other, which was a tough task, but eventually it was somewhat completed. Chara was happy having all of their friends around them simultaneously, but they didn't all share the same gravity towards each other, which was at the same time quite upsetting for them. Having scattering friends all over, they didn't know which way to turn, who to be with, and whom to let go. Days Go By is a story of Chara's focus on themselves, becoming more and more chill about their friends being so different and equally attracted to each other. They let many of their friends go, including gradually their first love, who they hadn't have guts to confess to this whole time. These were all of course important events, but in the long run, they didn't bother Chara too much, as they instead rather focused on their hobbies. Days were just going by. Chara was gradually growing up and gaining new knowledge. The plague, the cancer, kicks in all of a sudden on one day when the humans declared war on monsters. Humans had been meaning a scary one, a cruel one, the enemy when saying monster for a long time already, but Chara hadn't cared at all. Chara were themselves half human, half monster, and had lived both among monsters and among humans. They were only using human language, however, as every monster in the place they were living used exactly it. But were all understanding monster language too, like humans. Chara loved monster language, but was not fluent in it. During one of the meetings, their great-grandma told them that when she was young, their family was speaking monster, but under the pressure from humans, the whole city switched to human. So, as the war broke out, Chara found themselves in a completely hostile environment, living among humans. They were trying to be the voice of rationality, but with each day, less and less sympathy was left in everyone around, and monsters were being turned to brain zombies. Seeing this, Chara turned their solidarity completely towards the monsters, as the human race has been proving for them that humans are real-life demons. Chara started hating humans and wishing to leave their country, but it was not quite possible yet, because their mum was not ready for such a radical step and got long-term plans in that city. In the end, after several months, the human country declared that every citizen will have a duty to go to the army and potentially fight monsters. Chara and their mum were aligned here. As soon as they heard the news, they thought about the fastest escape from the country possible. And one day, they got together a majority of their possessions and moved to a neighboring country of humanized monsters, scared and anxious, but determined. However, Chara was not free of self-hatred stemming from the human part of their identity. They were one of the demons themselves. The lit fuse spends for the whole period of Chara's life in the new country. They needed to find accommodation in a fast pace, and they were not the only ones who migrated during those days, so the demand was high and the task was really difficult. But they still felt free and easy again once they stepped on that new land. Once they found the accommodation, the next 4 months were spent in practical isolation. They were certain it was not the final destination of their journey, and thus didn't bother finding any friends here, as they knew they were leaving soon. Nevertheless, some meetups with new people happened. The country had the same story as Chara's hometown. Once speaking their variation of monster, they fully stopped and started forgetting it under the new reality of speaking human. Chara already knew they had to restore what was pushed away forcefully by humans, and was meeting up with people speaking monster who were all undoubtedly sharing similar values with them, because they were only a little drop in the ocean of humanized individuals who didn't see nothing wrong with the situation. Chara knew they were not staying here for long for this reason, and eventually they made it to a country of a completely different race, the race of wolves. But before that, Chara had made a final decision to kill the human part in them by completely stopping speaking human and switching to monster with all of their relatives. In the wolf country, Chara was met very warmly, both literally changing complete snow scene of the previous location with warm air and green grass here, and giving them an opportunity to meet a whole lot of new fascinating friends in a versatile and bustling community just within a month. Moreover, Chara's monster father with his new wife managed to escape the fights in Monster City where Chara spent their childhood, and they finally met again. He was surprised and almost baffled by the fact that Chara's been speaking monster now, and during their interactions his wife even told him once that this is temporal fandango and Chara will eventually switch to human again. However, that was not really going to happen, as monster has now become Chara's main and sole language of thought, having completely overthrown the human language. No one around there had anything near that. Most relatives Chara was talking to understood monster, but everyone was answering back in human anyways. Chara, however, didn't care, no way it was gonna stop him, and most of their new friends didn't understand monster, so they needed to talk in human to them. Firstly feeling shame and discomfort, but gradually re-getting used to the human language, they spent the next months loosening up with their new friends in many places and activities. Many of them gave Chara important life lessons that they couldn't think of getting while back in their home country. In the end, Chara even went to school again, now studying in a language they were mastering during the last years, but had never been studying in, the universal language. This culmination was truly fascinating for them. New friends, new opportunities, new lifestyles and new insights. Everything was looking very promising for them. Hyperdeath explains Chara's internal thoughts closer to the end of the previous chapter. Being always a very pensive person, they had always been analyzing their own thoughts and feelings and have been approaching an eventual conclusion now. They weren't always fully who they truly wanted to be, but still were dependent on society's thought on them, fearing rejection that was prevalent in the Red Eyes era. They concluded that they ought to let them feelings show up. See, Chara had last cried only in their childhood, and no death and no war breaking had the power to bring them into tears again. Turns out, Chara has grown a huge thick layer of defense around their soul, gradually growing them stronger, but essentially leaving their soul with no opportunity to ever inform their consciousness about the scale of its true feelings. Having realized this, Chara thought this has made them hard-hearted in communication, brutal to other folks' souls, including all the humans they still hated. And thence, they had a plan to restore the power of their soul's voice, getting a dream of crying again. The very last of the song, however, shows a cruel moment of rejection of their new conclusions from the closest friend they made in this country. Please wake up tells that it was too late for Chara. Their new friends have already had enough of their callousness and were gradually fading away from Chara's life, but not showing an external sign of their contempt towards them. One by one, Chara's friends have been becoming busy for more and more meetups, eventually hiding their whereabouts and, more importantly, losing Chara's courage to even try to contact them for any reason. Chara was still in school, but no one there seemed approachable too. Quite a lot of things happened to them, but they didn't already matter, as no one was already there to share them with. The three dots, or I couldn't remember my name, I couldn't remember my life. All I knew was that I was gone forever. Begins Chara's solo journey in life. After they had their last walk with a friend, no slightest connection with any soul has been found for another year and a half. They still had education to care about, but were starting to struggle to bother too. Eventually, they stopped going to school at all, not being reassured on what they even needed for, if it only takes their energy and doesn't give anything back. After the school officially ended, with Chara not showing up for exams, as they knew they had no chance of passing them already, they were dropped guilt and shame on, because the school was really expensive for their father, and essentially Chara failed it, severing their connections even more now with their father. Chara's been trying to find any connection with anyone once more all over, but obviously failed miserably. So they forgot about the external world and only lived quietly in their thoughts. Chara's become addicted to music and was listening the same songs over and over and over again. No wonder their thoughts have become more and more similar with every new day. They entered a scary routine they didn't have power and energy to break. The music they listened to didn't evoke any emotion in them, just purely stimulating their brain activity over and over again, which is perfectly illustrated by the long first half of the song, a sort of marathon of metacognition. Having experienced nostalgia time to time from the time they migrated, it has become their new reality. Chara was never living in the present now, they only could in remote past or remote future. One day, with no interest whatsoever, but recognizing that it would have been their dream, Chara found a job opening and put it in a do-it-later can. However, they ended up applying for it on the off chance, wishing to do at least something meaningful. And Chara got hired, giving them a full load of new networking opportunities dreamed of. But Chara already didn't care. They were dead on the inside, only speaking mechanically with folks, without any hope and interest. They were now living in a limbo, a special hell for them. No life energy was being left. When Chara finally got a vacation, they came home and opened their laptop. They plugged in their headphones as always and searched for a musical monster they wanted to listen to for the last 2 years. And magic. One tear here, one tear there. When they finished 99.9% of the musical piece, they cried like never before. They silently blubbered once and once more. Victory, there was silently screaming inside. They repeated the thing. They discovered that the musical monster they were listening to was only a part of the whole composition, and were eager to get to know it all. They cried once more, and once more, and every time they cried, they cried stronger and stronger. The soul that was lying behind the music was so enormously strong, it managed to pierce through one end of their soul's chrysalis, go through and pierce the other end to let their soul out. They experienced the whole spectrum of forgotten emotions, from grief to euphoria, but could name any of those, as they were all previously frozen up and all melted in an instant. One thing they were able to name though, they were happy to the highest degree that they finally managed to be born again. The angel here represents all the life that awaits the newborn ahead, which, not having lived it, the newborn has no power to describe, but for which it has a great anticipation